Next, I'd like to welcome Team Tremtex. This is also another of those projects where this is building upon years and years of basic science research, but at the forefront of management of Parkinson's disease. And again, another example of a project where at the beginning of the year, a lot of clinical faculty and engineering faculty feel that this is just, too big of a challenge for you guys to take up in a year's time, but it always never ceases to amaze me how much the students can persist and actually come up with something meaningful. So over to you guys, Tremtex.
Hi, we're Tremtex, and we are bringing a way to help Parkinson's disease patients manage their motor symptoms. I'm Melody, and I'm here with my teammates Erin, Shruti, David, and Ian. And we're also working with awesome clinicians and researchers at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. Parkinson's disease is a debilitating neurodegenerative disorder. Its symptoms include tremors, bradykinesia, rigidity, and postural instability. And these symptoms make it extremely difficult for patients to perform everyday tasks, such as buttoning a shirt, brushing their teeth, or even just walking down the stairs. In the United States, there are 1 million people affected by Parkinson's disease, and the annual treatment cost is $8 billion. When a patient is first diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, he is treated with medication. However, this is far from a perfect solution. There are a lot of side effects associated with medications, and patients must take multiple doses daily. However, the most important part is that the efficacy of medication decreases over time, so that after a certain point, patients' symptoms are no longer adequately managed with medication. At this point, the other alternative is deep brain stimulation. However, this is an invasive open brain surgery, which has high risk and is expensive. Additionally, only 10% of patients are even eligible for deep brain stimulation. So as you can see, there's a huge gap of patients who no longer have their symptoms managed. We have a way to do this. It's called transcranial direct current stimulation, or TDCS. TDCS is a different, safe brain stimulation technique that has been shown to be advantageous for Parkinson's disease patients when used in conjunction with medication. The TDCS is delivered through electrodes to the scalp, which delivers current to the motor cortices of the brain. The current acts to enhance neurotransmitter reception, and this results in the reduction of motor symptoms. Specifically, medication provides a pool of dopamine. However, TDCS in supplement to medication helps the dopamine bind to receptors. Now I'll hand it off to Erin to talk about some of our clinical results.
Thanks, Melody. So how do we know that TDCS works? Our research partners at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine have been doing studies on patients with Parkinson's disease using TDCS for the past few years. These graphs right here show the results assessing the patient's motor ability when using TDCS. The graph on the left shows the Unified Parkinson's Disease Rating Scale score, which is a qualitative assessment performed by the neurologist following the patient's getting the stimulation. As you can see, based on the graph on the left, when the stimulation is applied, the patient experiences a significantly larger decrease in their motor disability. This means that the stimulation is allowing them to perform tasks like tapping their hands better or grabbing things. Additionally, the graph on the right shows a quality of life assessment the patients take before and after their stimulation. Again, you can see here that after stimulation, patients self-reported a significant improvement in their quality of life based on their ability to sleep better, eat better, and general improvements in their mobility. If you take a minute to read the quotes that you see before you, you can see that there's a clear demand for for TDCS therapy to be made available for the home setting. These quotes all come directly from patients that have been enrolled in the clinical trials and studies that our research lab is performing. So basically, to give you a little better idea of what is going on in the lab, right now, patients come into the lab, they get 2 sponge electrodes strapped to their head with sweatbands, and then an off-the-shelf TDCS current supply is attached to the electrodes. The patient is then in the lab for 20 minutes getting the stimulation. However, in order for the patient to actually get it, they have to be brought to lab so that the neurologist can assess where the electrodes need to be put in place, and they have to actually be at Hopkins right now. So our goal for this year was to take this lab therapy and move it into the home setting. I'm now going to pass it off to Shruti to talk about our device.
Thanks, Erin. So as she mentioned, how are we going to facilitate at-home use of TDCS? There are key clinical needs that we have to keep in mind. First, to ensure that the electrode is constantly maintaining close proximity to the scalp. Another need that we had to ensure is to make sure that patients have a way of placing the electrodes consistently on their scalp, provide them with an external controller with which they can control the stimulation, and lastly, build in fail-safes so that patients don't misuse the amount of stimulation that can be provided. So keeping this in mind, we have a detailed list of design specifications, including our custom-made TDCS circuitry to deliver 2 milliamps of current, how we're going to measure resistance drops to ensure maximum current delivery, as well as what are the fail-safes that we're going to build in to make sure that only 20 minutes of stimulation is provided daily. Keeping this in mind, we've developed the STIMband device, which is a non-invasive neurostimulation device placed on the head in which current is delivered through external electrodes. As you can see in this picture here and our actual prototype, patients can easily place this device on their head and receive stimulation daily in the home setting. In addition, they have a controller with which they can turn the stimulation on and off. This system diagram also outlines our specific electrical and software protocols. As you can see, we're boosting the power supply up to the voltage needed to deliver 2 milliamps of current. Specifically, we have a feedback loop in which the impedance is measured constantly to ensure that treatment is individualized for the patient. Our software protocols allow neurologists to change the amount of current delivery as well as the time of stimulation based on what's needed for the patient.
Thanks, Shruti. So after several months of going to clinic, going to Parkinson's meetings, we've been talking to patients, over 50 patients and 10 neurologists at multiple sites at this point. So as you can see, we have several iterations of our design, mostly in a human factors sense. So most of it's mechanical at this point, as you can see. We looked at the headset, the contour, how to put on the device, how the patient would put it on themselves, how to align it, looking at the interface between the electrodes and the scalp, and even things like the controller layout, the buttons, how the LEDs would work, and what kind of alerts they would want for a low battery or for the actual impedance checking. We've also went through the stimulation workflow with the neurologists, getting kind of feedback on how they would actually come in and get the device adjusted, how the patient would use it at home. And as you can see, we've looked at mechanical adjustment in many different ways, and also looking at having grids of electrodes that the neurologist can move through. So with that, we've also done electrical testing on our fail-safes using ISO and IEC standards, and also looking at the ramp up and ramp down of the current, which is very important in this case. We've also accommodated this sham simulation setting by ramping up and then turning off the stimulation so that this could be used in a clinical trial setting moving forward. So at this point, you're probably wondering how a patient actually gets one of these devices. And so what happens is the patient goes to the neurologist, they have their standard clinical visit, the neurologist evaluates them, and then at that point, they discuss their options. The neurologist can then prescribe the STIMband, fit the patient, and adjust using one of the ridges for the electrode housings to actually make sure that that electrode housing is placed correctly over the motor cortices. And then at that point, the patient can safely take the device home and use it for 20 minutes a day.
As you can see, we offer value to patients, doctors, and insurers. This is what we provide to the system. While there are no TDCS devices available on the market, there are a few companies out there that produce devices that compete with the STIMband. So Terex Medical produces a device that uses TDCS in a clinical research setting. This device is very expensive, costing thousands of dollars, and requires the use of a trained researcher. The Fisher-Wallace stimulator is also an electrical stimulation device, and it is used at home for patients. However, it does not utilize TDCS and is used for different indications and different treatments. Great Lakes Neurotechnologies has a product focusing on capturing the symptoms of Parkinson's disease patients. They measure things like slow movement and tremors in order to quantify how a patient is doing with their treatment. The STIMband offers a device that covers all these aspects, and we believe that we can make a difference. In order to protect the work that we've done over the past year, we have filed provisional applications, and we have new disclosures that we've been working with Johns Hopkins Technology Transfer Office in order to fully establish into patents. These applications will cover the electrode placement, a closed-loop system that optimizes the current parameters for the stimulation, and an implantable system that will be geared towards patients in the later stages of the disease that are unable to have the dexterity to interact with the STIMband device. There are a few next steps. The research lab will be conducting clinical trials with our prototype device. This will create a database of the safety and efficacy data necessary for FDA approval down the road. The engineering development will be continued in order to refine the STIMband device, as well as allow it to be used at home settings. Further down the road, we expect Medtronic and St. Jude Medical to be very good partners. They already have a portfolio of devices for neurological conditions, and with their help and expertise, we believe that we can get the STIMband device into every patient with Parkinson's disease into their homes. We'd like to take a moment and thank everyone that's worked with us over the past year. We had many emails, calls, and meetings, and we really appreciate all of their guidance over this process. We wouldn't be here without them, and we just wanted to take a moment and say we really appreciate all of your help. If anyone has any questions, you can come see us outside, and we can fill you in on more of what we've been up to and comment on any lingering questions. I guess we open the floor.
So the way, that's a great question, Umang. So the way that the electrodes are currently placed, because of the 5-centimeter distance that we place them, we believe they encompass all of the motor cortices compared to other electrode montages. However, we do provide the flexibility for the neurologist to change those parameters if needed. Those are things that we have incorporated in our device to make sure that if the clinical protocol changes, we can also change our device accordingly.
Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.